Welcome back, folks. Now in this lesson we're going to be trying to recreate this shader, and as you can see it's a rusty, dirty, colored glass, and the main image that I actually used to recreate this shader was this reference here. If you take a look at this middle bottle here, you can see it has some nice coloration going on and some dirt and rust on top. It's mostly dirt, but I actually try to make it more like a kind of rusty glass. When you put a glass in a long contact with a rusty metal, it can actually accumulate some rust. So it has some nice features, this reference here. You can see, first of all, the color tint, the green color tint, is more visible on top, and that's mainly because of the shape of the bottle here. You can see these lower sections are a lot wider compared to this narrow section at the neck of the bottle, and because the shape of this bottle is not like this, if we add that color tint using our AL surface shader or our Arnold standard shader, the whole bottle will get that color tint, that green color tint. So we're going to be using a method to kind of make sure that the color tint will only be visible on the upper section of our bottle. And then we start adding those rust and dirt and these leaks here using a few techniques. The main way of creating this basically this shader was actually the methods and techniques that we learned in our previous lesson, but we also learned a few other tips and tricks that can be extremely useful when you're developing shaders. So let me just close this and pull this thing here, and let's start making. As I need that specific control over the color of my glass, I'm going to be using AL surface shader instead of the Arnold standard shader. They're very close, so if you really know how to use Arnold standard shader, using AL surface shader should be also very simple. So I'm gonna create a new Arnold shader network, and let's name it dirty, or rusty glass or whatever. So let's open it up and open the network. There you go. I'm going to apply this material, and as you can see, I have this tag here, this texture tag, and it has some coordinates information like the scale, for example, and the projection, which is cylindrical, so we don't have to recreate it again. I'm just going to put this shader basically on top of that tag. Great. Now let's get started. So I'm going to start with an AL surface shader and connect it directly. Let's we don't need any diffuse. Let me just come here and run the IPR. So no diffuse, specular is 1. Let's just decrease the roughness for the timing, something like 0.15, and IR 1.51. And in our transmission, let's go to something like 0.95. Doesn't have to be quite clear. And the IR also 1.51. And now for the coloration, obviously we're going to be using the attenuation section. And one way of actually getting that color right based on your reference, if you just come here and I'm using this image here, you can use that reference image or any other reference image. So if you pick this color here, you can actually try to recreate that this exact color tint. So if I come here, let me show you what I'm doing. Let's create this color, and I'm going to select my color picker, and now what I'm going to do is going to pick that color on my other monitor, so the green tint that I'm seeing on this glass, so something like this. So this is the basic color, and you only need to go ahead and actually increase the saturation here. So go to something like this, and you start to get that color that you see in the image. So if you just increase the density scale, maybe something like 20, you can see it's getting very close to what we want. Now I have the exact color, which is this one. So let's press OK. As you can see, just a bit more saturated color. and I'm going to use a density scale like 40 here. Now what I'm going to do is to basically fade this color. So I only want this coloration, as you can see from the shader, to appear on the upper part. And as you can see, it's very, we can even decrease our density scale, but the image we're using, the map we're using to control the color of the attenuation is gonna basically do a lot for us instead of controlling these parameters here. So to do that, I'm going to be using, let me just come here. I'm going to be using a state vector node. So if I just use a state vector node, and now the variable that we are actually interested in is the shading point in world space and shading point in object space. I've seen people actually using this shading point in a world space a lot, but it has one serious problem. Let me just show you what is the problem. If I just come here and connect this and actually run the IPR, you can see now we get this shading, these colors based on the shading point. But the problem would be if I just run the IPR again and select my object, and let's say if I wanted to rotate it, you can see those colors are changing based on the position of our object in the scene and its coordinates. So what you can do is, instead of the shading points in object space, you can use PO, which is shading points in object space. This is the shading point in world space, and this is the shading point in object space. Now if you do that, okay, let me just, there you go. Now what's gonna happen is, whatever you do, you can see this is going to stay like, you know, it's based on the object coordinates, not the world coordinates. So if you do anything based on this object, it will stay the same if you animate or move your objects around. So that's great. Let me just control Z a few times. So now what I'm going to do, let me just run the IPR again. We only want the green section here. So what I'm going to do is to multiply this, use a green value. So this is our first input, and let's multiply it by a pure green value. Press OK. Now as you can see, now we have the green section because we're going to trying to fade our color away from top to bottom. And a color correct node to get rid of the green tint. So insert after, input, let's desaturate the image, and I'm going to just increase these, add some values to the overall image so we can have a more dynamic range to work with. And just to control the exact position of our black and white points, I'm going to be using a ramp flows node. So insert after, input, and let's just start. I'm going to reset this map, and let's see, something like this, and let's control click here, and maybe something like this. So as you can see, now we have these points. These guys are white, these guys are black, and now we can use this map as a mask, so the color tint that we want would only appear on this upper section. I'm going to show you how to do that quickly. So let me just come here, select this point. I want to make this fall off a bit more gradual compared to this sudden change here. So let's go to an easy out, sorry. Just trying to so as you can see, now it's a bit more gradual compared to what we had before. Let's see. Just some changes here and there. There we go. I think that's better. So the next step would be to load a mix map, or a mix node, sorry. And now I can select two colors. So the first color is going to be the color that we want to have. Let's say if it's, and the second one is going to be the white color. Now we have these two colors, and I can connect this mix map to my transmission, attenuation, color, this parameter here that's gone right now, right? So if I connect this, you're gonna get a color basically between 50% of this sort of turquoise color and this white color here. So if I connect this map that we have as the mix amount, so mix amount, what's gonna happen if I connect this mix map now? Obviously we need to change these two colors, so let's change this to white and change this to this color here. Now you can see we get that a color tint only on the upper section of our shader, and if I connect the surface shader, now you can see we get that subtle color change on the upper section. And if I want to, I can increase the density scale, let's say to 100, let's say to 100, and you can see we get that more of that color tint that we are interested in. So there you go. I'm just going to, was 40, I guess, yeah. So that's our first part of this section. Let me just come here and try to just manage these guys a bit better. Let's put these guys down here. Now we can now start to actually work on the specular and the transmission or refraction roughness, as we did with our other basically with our previous lesson. So let me stop the IPR. Now we will be basically trying to create a black and white map that can produce this sort of dirtiness like we did with our previous lesson. So just a black and white map that controls the specular and refraction roughness, and also the diffuse strength basically. So let's get started. As you can see, this dirt is quite busier compared to our previous lesson, and let's get started creating it. So I'm going to start by loading an image node here, and so if I come down here, I'm going to use this image here, BW32, and let's just shift drag here, and lets me connect it directly to see how it will apply. If I go to the UV coordinates, I'm going to increase the scale V to something like 2, and let's just move it around until I see something that I like, something like that. And let's see, bit to here, there you go. Obviously I want to have a lot more contrast, so let's lay down a simple color correct node, insert after as the input, and I'm going to first decrease the gamma, something like that, and a bit more. Let's increase the contrast, and let me increase the exposure also. Maybe something like this, but I think we can use a RAM float node to just have a bit more control. I think 2 even would work, but I like to use my RAM float node as much as possible. Let's use a RAM float node and insert after input. Let me just darken the whites a bit. Maybe something like this. Okay, let's go to 0.6 here. Okay, so that's our first map. And now if you take a look at this image here, this is going to be the main basically map that controls the specular and transmission roughness. But if you take a look at this map, you can see we have some darker spots here and there, and we have the same thing in our reference image also. So now we're trying to add this, and as you can see also they have a different color compared to the other parts that we're going to be actually create that too. But for the time being, let's just focus on the main map that controls the specular and refraction roughness. So if I come down here, let's lay down another image node, and this time I'm going to be using our, maybe this one is a bit better. Let me connect this. Just I don't want it to be that elongated, so I'm going to increase my scale with something like 2, and I guess something like this can be nice. And if I just move it a bit down, maybe something like this. Okay, so let's see, just 0.1, a round number. Let me just increase its contrast by adding a color correct node here. Insert after input, and let's maybe just, if I increase the exposure to something like 2 for the time being, will be enough. Now I can come here and basically combine these two layers. So this is going to be a layer color, and this is our first layer. Let me also save this. This is our second layer, and let's increase layer 1. If I just take a look at this node, layer 2, and let's change the layer 2 mode to lighten, so we can see both of these layers. So we have our base layer, and we can see we have these brighter spots here and there that are going to be used to basically recreate that, let's say, this darker spots, right? Another thing that you can actually see in this image, we have this kind of leaky effect down here that we can actually try and recreate, and it's gonna be we're gonna be using the same state vector node that we actually use to control the color here, but we're gonna be using it in a different way. So let's get started. If I come here, let me just stop the IPR for the time being, and here is the state vector node that basically controls the coloration of the color attenuation. And what I can do is to just use the same node but with using a bit more control. So let's say I can try to connect from this color correct node and start masking the third layer, but just to have a bit more control, I'm gonna just start connecting from the output here. So if I just first lay down a color correct node, so let me just, this is our color correct node, and let's just connect from this multiply node. So we have our shading state vector node set to shading point in the object space, then we multiplied it by a green value. Now we can come here, if I just connect this directly and run the IPR. Let's first desaturate it, and let's add maybe something like 0.2 for the time being would work. Obviously this time we want the effect to come from the lower sections, so from down to top. So this time if I just lay down a ramp float node, so let me just say insert after, and if I just reset this, I can basically come here and, as you can see, invert the image and the effect, and maybe something, as you can see, we can control how this map is working using this RAM float node. So maybe something like this. So the leaky effect will be available only in this lower section. And just to make it a bit more obviously realistic, I'm going to be using, let's just make more space here. So let's use another image to basically break up this perfect pattern that we have. And in this image, let's use this BW43. And if I connect this directly, that's what we have at the time being. Let me increase the scale, maybe even to 3. The image is upside down, so let's flip the V. Now I can come here and try to move this. Let's just move it down here. So to something like maybe this. And we can try, see, maybe something like this. Isn't too bad. Now what I'm going to be doing is control this basically map that we have here using this image and break it up. And for that we can simply use a multiply node, or we can go ahead and actually use a simple layer color node. So I'm just going to use a layer color node. It's more versatile. So this is our first layer, sorry, and this is our second layer. Let's connect that. Layer 1, layer 2. I'm just going to multiply this layer on top of the first layer. Now as you can see, we have this leaky effect just on this lower section that we want. But what I want to do is to just increase the exposure of this image a bit. So let's use a color correct node and insert after input. Let's increase the exposure, something like 2, 1. I think 0.5 would work in this case. So, and now if I get back, so this is going to be our third layer. This is the layer color node that we have. So this is our first 2 layer, and now we're trying to add this layer on top. So let's connect this to the layer 3 and increase the alpha of layer 3 and change the layer 3 blending mode to lighten. So now this is the map that's going to control the specular and refraction roughness, also our diffuse weight or diffuse strength as it's called in the AL surface shader. So if I just, let me save this and try, let's say this is going to be let's just select the surface shader. So we want the specular roughness, we want the transmission roughness, right? Put it on top here, and also we want the diffuse strength, as you remember from the previous lesson. But let's just, for the time being, add this guys here and here and connect the AL surface directly. And if I run the IPR, let's see what we're going to get, and then we can start adding the controlling diffuse strengths and diffuse color to get the effect that we are after. But just let's run the IPR, and when the IPR is finished, I'll be back. So as you can see, the IPR is finished and we have this render, and now it's time to start controlling the diffuse color and the diffuse strength. So as I mentioned, and as we did in the previous lesson, we're going to be using the same map to control our diffuse strength. So if I just connect this to diffuse strength here, let's maybe move it up, and now if I just maybe we can render maybe these parts here or here, sorry. Okay, let's run the IPR. Now you start to see more of that diffuse color coming through. So if I come here and actually change this color to a kind of rusty color like this and press OK, you immediately see that color coming through. So and now one thing that I mentioned actually is we want to actually have two color control this map. As you can see from this render, we have this base rust color and we have these darker spots. And what controls these darker spots in the map and the shader that we have, if you remember, is this image here. So if I just take a look at image number 2, so if I press Ctrl Shift V, you can see this is what controls those spots basically. And now we want these spots to be a bit darker compared to what we have. So what I'm going to be doing is, if I come here and let's use a mix node. So again, now we need two colors. One color for basically the main rusty parts, and the second color for the darker spots. And what's going to be controlling the mix amount is going to be this image. So if I come here and actually connect this, we're going to get this. You can see we have our base rust color and we have this darker spot on top. I can control the diffuse color with this mix map. So let me just zoom in here and connect this to diffuse color, right? Now if let me just lay down these nodes a bit better. So that's our mix map. We can put it maybe here. And if I connect the surface node, you can start to see from the IPR that we have that base color, and as you can see we have these darker spots here and there. So that's about it, and that's the shader that we have at the time being. Getting a bit out of hand. This is our first layer, this is our second layer, and this is our third layer here, and this is the nodes that control the color, attenuation color here. Okay, maybe we can, there we go, that's a lot better. So I'm just going to wait for the IPR to be finished, and when it's finished I'll be back to see where we are. So as you can see, the IPR is finished and we get a very close result to what we had in our rendered image that I showed you, this one. So as you can see, it's very close. Maybe the placement of the images is a bit off and I can adjust those. And the final thing that we need to add is obviously the bump mapping, and I'm just going to do it very quickly and use the exact same bump map that I did for the previous lesson, because it's a very subtle effect. So it's very quickly here, bump 2D and noise. Also I need an image node to multiply it on top of the noise here. So that's going to be here. Let's run the IPR, increase the octaves, go to something like maybe 7 like we did before. That's enough. And then we have this image, and I think we used image 38 the last time. And what I'm gonna do is to, let's say, you can see how it is going to be applied. It's good. And maybe just to, like we did before, use a ramp float node to decrease the contrast. Sorry, I think we missed this input, and that's going to be the, for the time being, let's connect that. So go to a very small value, and here let's go to something like this, and layer color nodes. The noise is going to be the first layer, and this is going to be our second layer. And if I connect that directly, layer 1, layer 2, and go to multiply, and then this is going to be our bump map, and this is going to be the shader. So if we can just connect it, and the bump height, I think we used 0.04 there, and we can increase this value here because obviously the shader needs to be a bit more hammered, and by increasing the bump height you can make your shader look more aged and antique. So this is what we have at the time being. So we can let the bump map tool finish, but what I'm going to do is to just go ahead and adjust this image placement using the offset values here and there, and just try to get the placement that I like with this dirt maps. And when it's done, I can start doing a final render and show you the final results. Now, if you wanted to have a less contrasty result compared to what we have here, what you can do is to adjust the layer color node that you have here. So if I just connect this image, you can see it's very contrasty because the effect we need requires that level of contrast. But you can simply use a ramp float node or color correct node to connect this layer color to, and then connect that ramp float node or color correct node to this inputs here, and you can decrease the contrast or even increase the contrast if you wanted to, or you can individually control these images and decrease or increase their contrast to get different effects. So let me just go ahead and change the offsets values for these images just a tad, and the scale values to get what I want. So as you can see, just before the final render, we have this IPR finished with bump map connected as the root, and as you can see, we have a beautiful result, and I think it's quite interesting. Let's just go ahead and try to increase the camera samples to 4 and refraction samples to 4, glassy samples to something like 3. And even though it's a bit too much, we can decrease our camera samples, and I'm going to increase my refraction samples to something like 5 or even 6. 5 is going to be enough, and that's it. I'm not gonna go crazy on the settings here. So yeah, we're good to go ahead and actually render this, and when the render is finished, I'll be back to take a look at the final render. So this is our final render, and I'm quite happy with the result. As you can see, we have lots of details that make this shader to be so beautiful. Actually, I changed one render setting. I increased a few samples to 3 because the background is white. We had tons of noise in the background, so I increased a few samples to 3, and that increased render time. But the final result really worth the time. As you can see, it's so beautiful. We have this detail, and it really looks nice and gorgeous. Hopefully you learned a lot, and let me know if you have any specific glass shader in mind, and just send an email and I will be updating the course and make more glass shaders. But I think we're done with glass shaders, and we start a new type of shaders and materials from our next lesson. Hopefully you'll learn a lot, and I will see you in the next lesson. Thanks for watching this video tutorial. It was a free sample from our course Developing Realistic Shaders in Arnold For Cinema 4D Volume 1. Make sure to visit our website mographplus.com and check the entire course out. Also, don't forget to check the second volume of the course. See you next time.